Hello, my fellow YouTubers. This is Kurt. Welcome back to the Kurt's Place channel here on the YouTube. This is going to be my 5 tips for a fun amusement park experience video. I'm going to tell you 5 things that I've learned over the years to allow you to have a really nice time at an amusement park before you go. Okay, now I want to mention at the end of the video, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to leave, feel free to leave those at the comment section down below. Also, if you want to click that subscribe button, feel free to do so. That way you can keep up with all my current videos. And as always, if you like what you see, go ahead and click that like button as well. And also, I wanted to thank you again for all your support as well on the channel. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about, the number one is going to be check the website of the amusement park that you're going to be visiting. You want to check the website for various reasons. You want to find out what hours the park's operating on, what rides the park has, shows, different things, current events that might be going on, and also keep in mind that a lot of times you can get discount tickets and things to shows and things and park tickets by going to the amusement park website as well. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention to you, another good reason to go to the amusement park website. Now, also keep in mind you can also go to Facebook. If the amusement park has a Facebook page, I also recommend checking both of those before you go to the park. Now, a good example. King's Dominion, a few years ago, the Intimidator 305, which is a big roller coaster, they had a problem with the cable lift system, and the Intimidator 305 was down for a good majority of the season. It was down. I went to the website, and it actually said that on the website. Because what you don't want to have happen is, you don't want to go to the amusement park and find out that your favorite ride and things is not operating. Now, also keep in mind, too, things such as, I'll give you a good example. I originally checked King's Dominion, and I was planning on going on one of the weekends in September to go to the park. Well, luckily I didn't assume that weekend was still available, because at the beginning of the season the weekend was available, but what ended up happening was a private event ended up buying out the park for that weekend, and the weekend was not available any longer when I checked back on the website. Even though it was available earlier in the season, it changed. Once we got into the season, somebody bought the park out. Well, I went to the website, and luckily I did that because it showed me that the park was closed on that day. Luckily, I didn't plan a trip on going there. So that's one of the things I definitely recommend you do. Definitely check the website for hours, rides, operating things, discount tickets and more, current events happening at the park. Now, here's another thing that I suggest that you do. Number 2 is going to be view maps to get an idea of how to plan your day. Now, a good example is, I'm going to show you 2 maps that I have here. Now, keep in mind that a lot of the maps and things I have now, you can actually get those online. If you go to the amusement park site that you're going to go, for example, Great Adventure, sixflags.com. You could go to you can find out about Great Adventure. If you go to King's Dominion, you can go to Cedar Fair Parks. Find out about King's Dominion and other parks you might be interested in. Now, I'm going to give you a good example of why that's important. Now, this is an example for King's Dominion. This is the general operating calendar for King's Dominion when the park is open during the season. I'm going to hold this up so you can read this. Hopefully close enough so you'll be able to read it. Now, you're going to notice that we actually have a part. This is actually tells you things such as safety factors and things like that on the back. Now, on the front, it's also, this is going to be the park map. This is going to show you where everything is in the park. Now, you're going to notice that in this map here, this is the map for the main season. Now, you're going to notice that if you're going during the main season, this is all the things you have available to go during the main season. This map is actually tailored for you to go during the main season. As you can see, the rides and things are actually tailored for the main season. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is if you're going for a special event, good example, the Halloween Haunt at King's Dominion is a good example. Do not assume when you're going for a special event that all the rides are going to be available that you currently had available during the main season. That can change. Now, I'm going to give you a good example of that. This is the Halloween Haunt event at King's Dominion. This is the actual brochure for Halloween Haunt at King's Dominion. Now, you're going to notice there's some differences here. This is the events that are going on for the Halloween Haunt. This map actually has the events that are going on for the haunt. Now, you can actually download the PDF on these on the computer and look them over for yourself. But now here's something you're going to notice in the back of the map. You notice all the black areas in the back of the map? All these different black areas and things, these are all rides that are not currently operating during the haunt. So the thing to keep in mind is this is what's currently operating. This calendar is much different than the one that I showed you previously. Here, you can see the difference. This calendar has all the rides operating in the park. Okay, now of course, water rides and things will vary depending on the season. This calendar has only selected rides operating for the Halloween Haunt. And that's another reason why you want to go to the website and check the events before you go. If you go to the website, for example, King's Dominion, you look up Halloween Haunt, it actually will tell you all the rides and things that are operating during the haunt and the ones that are not, the ones that are operating during the haunt. Don't assume that all the roller coasters and things are going to be operating during a special event like a Halloween haunt or a special ride invitation event. That's one of the reasons why you want to make sure you check that website, because you don't want to go to the park on a Halloween event or a special and find out you can't ride your favorite ride. That's one of the reasons why you always want to check the maps and everything before you go to the park. Now, also keep in mind that, too. Another reason for going to the website is if they have a special event planned, for some reason something unforeseen happens, like maybe you have a hurricane or something that's coming up, or you have bad weather that gets involved, they may actually change the events that you have planned when you're going to go. So always check the Facebook page and also check the website before you go to look up the current maps and things that they have for the events that you're going to go on. This will save you some aggravation things if you want to go and find out that a ride you want to ride isn't operating. Okay? Now, the number 3 thing is going to be make sure that you always check the weather forecasts and everything in your area, as well as the traffic reports before leaving for the park. Now, a good example why this is important. If you're going to a park like King's Dominion and you're going on a weekday, you have to assume you're going to have some traffic. But the thing to keep in mind is, if you're planning to go to the park and the park opens at, let's say, 10:30, and you have construction on 95 going to the park, you can anticipate that is going to put a delay in your trip. It could be, now, a good example. I went to King's Dominion earlier in the year, and they had construction on 95. That construction delayed me over an hour worth of extra traffic because we got stuck in traffic. That narrowed everything down to one lane. So always view your traffic reports and everything, your weather and everything on the weather sites, and also the traffic sites on the internet on the area that you're going to be visiting before you go to the park, to see if there's anything that's going to be unforeseen that might put a damper on your day and also shorten the amount of time you have at the park when you go. Okay, so that's the number thing. Definitely check the traffic reports and weather. Now, the other thing, number 4, is going to be when you're at the park, make sure that you eat food and things before you go to the park, or you can eat in the park. Now, one of the things I like to do when I go to King's Dominion, I usually like to eat at a little place called Spotsylvania. I usually like to eat before I go to the park. And what I found is the food in the park and everything is good. What I do, because I'm a season pass holder too, I'll keep that in mind too when I'm making this video. I like to eat before I go to the park. And what I do in the park on there is I usually get some candy and things in the park. But as far as dinner and everything goes, I usually do all those things outside the park, just because of the fact it works out pretty well where I'm at. And there's a lot of really good places to eat before I get in the park. Now, the other thing when you're in the park too is make sure you drink plenty of water. It's very important when you're in the park to drink plenty of water, because dehydration can really put a damper on your day. If you're dehydrated in the park, and for example, you're waiting in line for a ride, and it's a 2-hour wait or an hour-and-a-half wait. Now, keep in mind, King's Dominion lines, places like Cedar Point and things, some of the rides can have pretty long lines, and if it's the heat of the summer, you want to make sure you drink plenty of water before you get into that line to avoid dehydration. And also, you're going to also find that something else I recommend you doing too. In addition to having water, make sure you keep your sugar levels up. Now, one of the things I do to keep my sugar level up at the park, I don't buy Coke and things at King's Dominion when I'm there. I usually don't buy Cokes and things. I treat myself one day a year, usually to a funnel cake, usually for 4th of July. Otherwise, what I found works really well is go in one of the candy shops, get some gummy bears or some gummy worms, and then have some water with them. And I find that really helps to keep my sugar level up too. That way, when you're losing sugar and things throughout the day, you can keep your sugar level up. Okay, that's another thing that I suggest you do. Now, the number 5 thing is going to be when you're going to the park and when you're planning your time out for your rides, always allow enough time to do the rides that you want to go. Now, a good example, King's Dominion during the main season. Now, you can also check the park reviews and things like that. Some of the park reviews and things will actually have park reviews. I have some park reviews on TripAdvisor I've actually put up about King's Dominion. But you can also find out how long some of the lines and things are going to be for some of the rides and things that you plan. Now, a good example, when you go to King's Dominion, if you can get to the park early when the park opens, usually your lines are going to be shorter versus later in the day. Now, a good example, Volcano the Blast Coaster at King's Dominion typically takes, from what I understand, I have not waited in a really, really long line lately, but it takes anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours on a typical Saturday during the day to ride Volcano the Blast Coaster if the park is busy and the weather is perfect. Now, what I like to do with that ride is I like to go later in the evening and ride Volcano, the blast coaster. I usually put it near the end of my day. I find that it's a little bit cooler. It makes it a little easier waiting in line, and usually the lines are a little shorter as well. And also, it's one of those rides that's really good at night. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind: if you're planning a specific seat, for example, let's say you say, for Kingston is a good example. If you want to ride the Intimidator 305, and this was in one of my other videos, and you want to ride that front seat, it's very important that you allow time for that front seat. Keep in mind on some of these roller coasters, now the Intimidator 305 is a good example of this. The line for the front seat, if the park is busy, the line sometimes for the front seat might close a half hour to an hour early. What will happen is when you get to the ride where you actually get in line to go to the actual station, the line will actually split off, and you'll have one side like this, one side here. This will be for the regular seats, and then this side will be for the front seat, and it actually will veer off. What they'll do is they'll put a trash can in front of the line where the front seat is, usually anywhere from half an hour to an hour before the ride closes. So if you want to get that front seat, you're not going to be able to get in line if you don't allow time for that. Remember, you have to allow time for the front seat line plus the line that is currently going to the ride as well. Now, typically on Intimidator 305, if it's during the summer, I usually allow about a full hour and a half usually for that ride to get on. If you're just riding a regular seat, it usually doesn't take long. But if you want to get that front seat, you have to make sure you allow time for that to get in line. Because what can happen is when they close that front seat line off, if you try to get in that front seat line after it's been closed up, they know exactly who the last person was. They will actually kick you out of the line and make you go on the regular line if you try to sneak in that front row. That's one of the things I recommend. Now, some of the rides, for example, like Volcano, the blast coaster. Now, the front seat line for Volcano usually isn't as long. It's usually maybe 20 minutes or so for the Volcano, the front seat line. But the same thing applies. If you don't get in line early enough, and for example, if you get in line for Volcano at let's say 9:30, and you want to get that front seat, you have half an hour basically to get to the ride, but then you have another 20 minutes for the front row line. So what can happen is you can be in line, but because the train takes enough people through on the regular seats, when you're in that front row line, what can happen is they can say, oh, attention riders, we're only going to run, the park is now closed, we're only going to run 2 more trains. So keep in mind, if you want that front seat, make sure you plan accordingly. Allow extra time for that front seat. That way you're not going to be disappointed. And also the other thing too to keep in mind when you're waiting in lines, especially for specific seats, if the ride has a breakdown, for example, normally if you're waiting in line and the ride has a breakdown, one of the things I suggest you do is, on average, I find that most of the time a ride breaks down. Usually if the ride is not fixed within 30 minutes, then I'll usually go ride a different ride. I mean, if it's cutting into my day too much. Now, keep in mind that I have a season pass, so getting on rides is a little easier if that happens. But that's one thing to keep in mind. If a ride does break down, and trust me, King's Dominion maintenance is very good on their rides for the most part, but they do have technical difficulties that come up on Volcano and Intimidator. Rides that are more complicated tend to have more problems. So basically, if that happens, allow yourself about half an hour. And if it's not fixed in half an hour and you have time to get on another ride, definitely do so. Because what can happen is that half hour that you wait, if you wait longer than that, you may actually end up losing another ride that you wanted to go on because you waited too long. So my advice is, if they don't have the ride fixed up in half an hour or so, when they say it's broken down, go ahead and find another ride to go on. Okay? I also want to mention one other thing too. The other thing too to keep in mind when you're at the park is, you need to remember that also definitely wear comfortable footwear and things when you're in the park. It's going to make your experience a lot more enjoyable. Okay? I hope that this video is going to help you have a really nice time when you plan your next amusement park experience. And as always, I want to thank you for coming to the Kurt's Place channel and checking out my video. I hope you all have a great day now. Bye-bye now. Have fun.